I once came across the following statement: fear is faith in evil. I confess that at the time I did not quite grasp the depth nor the overwhelming truth in the statement, but life, however, has led me to understand it. You will think me crazy when I say that the chaos, the division, the suffering and the unhappiness that we see unfolding in the world today stem from one fundamental choice that humanity keeps making. The choice to align itself with one emotional force over another. But that is the truth at the core of the problem. There are two primal emotional forces that govern human consciousness. One elevates, unifies, and brings coherence, harmony, and order. The other constricts, distorts, fractures, and creates confusion and chaos. The first one could be described as the force that expands consciousness, whilst the other is the force that contracts it. One is the building block with which the universe was created. The other is the fuel that feeds an illusionary matrix designed to keep us divided, distracted, and subdued. Logic would suggest that humanity would naturally choose the force that leads to clarity, harmony, and freedom. Yet, the uncomfortable truth is that we mostly operate under the influence of the darker one. So what are these two emotional forces from which everything else stems from? The first one, you may have guessed, is love. Love in the greater, grander scheme of things. Not just in the romantic sense, but love as the force that infuses everything with divine energy. Love as the coding language of this universe. Love as the expression of God within us and around us. The other one, on the other hand, is the plague that has infected humanity into submission, compliance, self-loathing, disempowerment, and what is beginning to look like self-extermination. It is the ultimate weapon of control: fear. Through fear, humanity has subjugated to a system of enslavement in exchange for a false sense of security. We have turned our backs to the truth about ourselves and instead live in a constant state of confusion, anxiety, and inner conflict, which is shutting down our consciousness. Human consciousness expresses itself through three fundamental aspects: thought, emotion, and action. When there is unity of consciousness, when our thoughts, our feelings, and actions are in alignment, when we think and feel and do what is right, there is no internal conflict, no antagonism. There is instead self-respect, self-governance, or what we might rightly call sovereignty. However, when this unity of consciousness is broken, when we don't do what we know to be right, what we know to be moral, for fear of the consequences, we are betraying our spirit. We are turning against the inner compass that guides us. We are acting in opposition to our true self. In Hebrew, the word shatan, or Satan, means to oppose. Satan is the eternal opposer, the antagonist, the nemesis within ourselves. So when we live in opposition, when we act in misalignment with our higher nature, guess who we have invited into our soul? The phrase "fear is faith in evil" suddenly begins to make sense. Just like a parasite can take hold of an organism without an immune system, fear has taken hold of an entire generation devoid of courage. And evil, as we are witnessing, has taken root. We have become a society of cowards, afraid of absolutely everything. We're afraid of what others may think, of not fitting in, of standing up, and of being truthful. We're afraid of climate, of viruses, of aging, and of death. We're afraid of dreaming, of daring, of trying, of failing, of hurting, and of pain. But nothing was ever achieved without the courage to act despite fear. Nothing was created, nothing was discovered, nothing was overcome ever without defying fear. So let's face fear as the wake-up call, as the trigger that will finally force us to remember who we are. For the only path out of fear is the path to self-realization. As Socrates so simply and profoundly put it, know thyself. The strength and the courage required to confront fear come from understanding our true nature through knowledge and introspection. It comes from stepping into higher awareness and living in alignment with the principles of creation. So long as we believe that there is no underlying intelligence that governs creation, so long as we subscribe to the notion of a random, purposeless universe, so long as we think what our senses perceive is all there is, so long as we follow dogma instead of reason, so long as we operate through intellect divorced from intuition, materialism devoid of spirituality, logic empty of imagination, and the absurd notion that morality is relative, we will continue to succumb to fear in the ignorance about who we are, what is true, what is right, and what is moral. Humanity suffers from a severe case of cognitive dissonance, a willful denial of reality and a refusal to accept what is true in favor of what is false. Why is there such a lack of courage, you may ask? Because there is a lack of knowledge, a lack of wisdom, and a lack of truth. We look outside of ourselves for the enemy and we give it names, people, organizations, secret societies, cults, religions, nations, you name it. But whatever shape or form it takes, all it does is promote, instigate, and spread fear. The controllers of this world are the controllers of fear. We need not fight them. We need to fight the fear within. Humanity has one enemy. It has one battle to fight, and it's an internal battle. Nobody can fight it for you. You are either the hero or the victim in this war, and it's up to you to decide. Only you can choose to stand in love or in fear, in alignment with your greater self, or in submission to the chaos and confusion that comes from surrendering to the notion that you are less than what you truly are, that you are matter instead of spirit, that you are mortal instead of eternal, that you are worldly instead of divine. We say we want freedom, but freedom is not possible in a society that ignores the truth and abandons morality. Freedom is the God-given ability to do what is objectively right and good. It is not the license to do whatever you want, at least not without consequences. The lack of understanding of this fundamental truth is the reason humanity has had to endure so much suffering. This is the truth that will set you free. Until we understand that freedom and morality are directly proportional, we will continue to walk down the path of tyranny and slavery. In the words of Peter Marshall, may we think of freedom not as the right to do as we please, but as the opportunity to do what is right. A very special soul once walked this earth to try and teach us how to be free. He led by example and personally waged a spiritual war against the same forces of control that continue to enslave us. He opposed the organized religious order of the day. He fought the money changers at the temple and was finally persecuted and killed by the state. Effectively, he stood against the three mind control systems that we're still trying to free ourselves from: institutionalized religion, the financial system, and government. Jesus Christ did not believe in the authority of man over man. He came to teach us that the only way of having true freedom was for man to live in accordance and harmony with God's law. 2,000 years later, humanity has still not learned the lesson. I live in the hope, however, that perhaps the great awakening that we are witnessing might be the moment the penny finally drops. Life was not designed to be scary. It was not designed to keep us in perpetual fear. Life is simply a chance for consciousness, which is ultimately what we are, to have an individuated physical experience. The phrase, "don't be afraid," is one of the most prevalent in Scripture. Jesus repeatedly asks his disciples, "Why are you afraid?" Fear only crept in when we forgot who we are, where we come from, and why we're here. And the controllers of the world have used our ignorance to promote fear as the most effective method of mind control. They have led us down the road of materialism, hedonism, atheism, nihilism, scientism, feminism, wokeism, fascism, communism, and most recently, transhumanism, because eventually all of it leads to totalitarianism, and thanks to today's technology, to technocratic neo-feudalism, the new world order of slavery. The concept of a single ruler was simply replaced by the model of a ruling class. We went from monarchy to what now looks like a corporate oligarchy. But the concept is the same: rulers and subjects. Subjects being the appropriate word, for we are indeed subjects to the indoctrination and mind control at the hands of the education and media industrial complex. We are subjects to the genetic manipulation at the hands of the pharmaceutical industrial complex. And we are subjects to the eternal conflicts and wars at the hands of the military industrial complex. The matrix has all the structures of control in place. The machinery is well oiled. All they need is to keep us in ignorance and in fear. And so humanity continues to safe and effectively walk towards its own demise, hypnotically following the Pied Piper's tune of deceit, disempowerment, and self-denigration. The question remains: how long will we continue to subjugate to fear? When will we overcome the barriers to self-realization so that we can finally come to understand our spiritual nature, our creative power, and our higher purpose? The control and slavery system is actually about the limitation of free will through the destruction of possibility. The indoctrination runs so deep in our psyche. We are so attached to institutionalized belief systems that we can no longer even imagine the possibility of true freedom. Like an animal that was born into captivity and no longer has the ability to imagine life outside of the cage. It's time we switch from slave mentality to becoming the rulers of our own kingdom, the kingdom of self. Let's stop abdicating personal responsibility to others. Let's hold the reins of our own destiny. Let's defy fear by choosing love every step of the way. And let's use our imagination to envision where we want to go before we end up where we wish we'd never been. Fear is not only faith in evil. Fear is placing your bets on Satan instead of God, on chaos instead of order, on conflict instead of harmony, and on slavery instead of freedom. Fear is lack of love, just like darkness is lack of light. So next time your fear sense is infecting your thoughts and pushing you to make decisions in opposition to your higher self, take a moment to reflect and ask yourself, who am I betting on? Fear or love? Satan or God? It's about time we make the right choice. Thank you.